Great to be chatting again with our friends at Market Check. We're speaking with Nick Crundall today. How are you, Nick?
I'm very well, Ricky. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Now, first of all, we talk about it regularly here on Flow, but of course it keeps feeding into prices and I guess the supply side when it comes to conflicts and accusations Russia is withholding food. Tess used the term that they might be weaponising food to try and get a good outcome on sanctions. It's still feeding into the market, isn't it, the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
It is. We're getting sort of nightly updates on what's happening. There's a lot of political pressure to get a deal done between the UN, Russia, Ukraine and Turkey have entered the fray, basically saying they will provide security for the vessels to get into Ukraine and get that grain out and available to the world. So it seems to be going really well, and then you have a setback. Russia will come out and they sort of damaged a grain terminal in Ukraine over the weekend, or they'll come out and change the rhetoric and say that they want all sanctions lifted or something like that, and we sort of take two steps back. But that is what happens there is really the big mover in grain markets at the moment. We're just trying to work out, if a deal is actually going to happen and what it might look like.
Well, down on the, on the local level, what that's feeding into is some pretty good prices for our producers across South Australia, Victoria and southern New South Wales. Yeah,
the prices are great. If you compare them to what the prices are like for the rest of the world, they're not particularly strong. But historically speaking, they're very good for both any crop that's still remaining unsold from last year's harvest and the crop that's in the ground now. We're looking at very much above average prices going into sort of the back end of 2022, which is always positive.
Yeah, certainly. Isn't that a bit unusual as well, in the sense that people don't tend to look to Australia to sort of stitch up supplies this early in the season?
Yeah, we have a sort of exportable surplus, say, for wheat of 17 million tonnes in an average year, which makes us important, but certainly not sort of up there with the top couple of exporters in the world. But given everywhere else in the world has seen supply sort of go backwards, or you can't get out of Ukraine, or Russia's under a big cloud, and Australia's having these massive crops, all of a sudden we've become a very, very important part of the global grain sort of market. And we've sort of saved the market to some degree in terms of our record crops.
And I suppose to some degree as well, there's some, I guess, if you like, geopolitical stability that's attractive here when you see other countries restricting their exports to look after their own food security.
Yeah, that's it. We have good quality wheat. We have reliable, exporters that generally operate here. Our geopolitical sort of landscape is very solid, so we are a very safe option. Our one limiting factor is, there's only so many ports that we can export out of, and we can only get it out so quick.
Yeah, that's right. We saw that on the East Coast after the last harvest, for instance. Just on canola, the latest ABARES indications is there's yet another big pile-on when it comes to what farmers have planted, and just across all the cropping, Victoria's planted an extra 10% over what it normally does. Is that doing anything when people look at forward prices for things like canola?
It is in some degree. Canola is much like wheat. There's really not that much of it around the world. Ukraine's a massive exporter into Europe of canola, and they're obviously under a bit of a question mark. So Australia is really like the most important canola export outside of Canada at the moment. So again, we need a big crop, and normally if we were having these big increases in our planting acres, you'd naturally think the price would sort of come under pressure, but the expectation is the market globally will gobble up every tonne of canola that we could possibly produce this coming year. So it shouldn't have too much of an impact at this stage.
Yeah, good news on output prices, but problems on input prices. We haven't got time to talk about that today, but we'll follow that up very soon. Thanks again, Nick, for joining us from Market Check. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ricky. Cheers.